Ty here. Hope everyone is doing well. 2 days into the new year, and this could be one of the longest videos of the year outside of live streams. So, with that in mind, I'm gonna have timestamps in the description, of course, for this video. And while it'd be cool for you to watch the video from start to finish, if you're looking for the part that applies to you, whether it's winter weather, severe weather, or just the cold itself, you can find what you need in the description. That being said, we have a lot, and I mean a lot, to go over here. We have severe weather to talk about for Sunday. We have a day 4 slight risk here. Pretty large area that stretches all the way from East Texas all the way into parts of southwestern Tennessee. That includes the city of Memphis. We have Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas involved once again as well. So more than likely we will be live streaming this, and this is a day where once again all hazards do seem possible. Very dynamic system we're going to be dealing with. And off to the north of this and also to the west of this, we're potentially going to be looking at an ice storm along with snow to go with this. So big winter storm that's going to have dynamic elements to it here. So we go beyond this point here, the severe weather threat, of course, is going to drop off with all that massive cold air coming in too. It's also going to cut off that Gulf of Mexico moisture, which is an essential element to severe weather here. This is going to be, of course, like I said before, one of many things that we're going to be talking about here. Something that I do need to address, though, to go along with this is the model data has been changing notably over the last day or so. It's kind of hard to read what the trends are really at this point. The GFS and the Euro, for the most part, have been in good agreement. That has since changed now. So we're going to do something that we may have only ever done once or twice on this channel. We're actually going to have 3 different models to choose from here. We're starting to get in range of some of these shorter range models like the Icon, which goes up to 180 hours. GFS goes to 384 and the European model goes to 360. So we're going to have a good little model comparison here, but it's a lot to go over. So I'm going to try to keep this as brief as I can, but as thorough as I can. If I don't succeed, you'll definitely see those timestamps in the description here. This will probably be a part all by itself, but in any case here, we're going to start out by mainly keeping the GFS on the screen here. The top left corner is probably going to be the Icon. I'm going to have the Euro, of course, on the bottom left here as well. But as we move this further along, now keep in mind I'm going to go as slow as I can, so that way when I edit these, I can do this as cleanly as possible. So, of course, as we know, right now we're just dealing with a little cold weather, nothing major along the lines of winter weather as of right now, until this system comes along here. Now, one thing that you'll notice with both of these, with all 3 of these models, is the timing for when this trough arrives differs pretty notably here. But things really start to pick up by the time we get towards the afternoon of the 4th onward here. You're already starting to see that shield of wintry precipitation here. Some of these, one of the models here still has it as rain. GFS does, of course. And then as we go further along, that cold air begins to rush in. You can see how the surface low here is beginning to develop. This is an upper level low to go along with it because we're looking pretty high up in the atmosphere at this point. As you go further along here, you can see that this is going to be the catalyst to our severe weather here. We have a decent bit of forcing here. It's not I don't think it's going to be quite as strong as what we had last week to kind of close out 2024, but still a situation where I think all hazards again will be possible. If that forcing increases any, though, we could have a pretty similar event to what we had last week. So the threat for Sunday is still somewhat conditional, but as time goes on, as that frontal boundary moves in, forcing will tighten up. So I do think we will see storms. How far south those go and what kind of elements, what kind of hazards we'll be dealing with is all going to be dependent on how this forms, how this performs, and how this evolves as we go forward here. Also go with that, here comes that 540 line that's going to be right around the central point of where we see these contours. And of course, that's going to be where we end up having our battle zone here. We're going to be dealing with probably some snow, some sleet, and maybe even a little bit of ice mixed in as well. Some of these places could get significant ice too, potentially up to 2/10 of an inch of ice. That's going to cause a lot of problems over towards this region. Makes for hazardous roadways, potential power outages could be possible here. So it's a good chance we could be going live to cover this as well. So like I said, we're going to be kind of all over the place here. And then as we go further along, we see this slope begin to deepen. And this is when the snow chances really start to increase over towards the Ohio Valley. A lot of unknowns also with this as we go further along here with this storm system here. I'm not too sure if anyone even prefers to go with the whole winter storm name thing that the Weather Channel has done, but and I haven't really been keeping up with myself, truthfully, but I don't really think there's been many storms to begin with. But in any case, though, if regardless of whether the storm is named or not, towards the backside of this, over towards Kentucky, maybe even parts of Tennessee, before all is said and done here, we might have a little bit of wraparound snow on the backside of this. Also, would be watchful of the potential of a confluence band that develops here, which could potentially increase snowfall totals here. As of right now, I would say you would get about maybe 1/10 of an inch. We move this further along, we'll see this move out, have a brief warm up, and then this is where the real cold air begins to occur here as we get into the 8th and beyond. Big time trough comes in, and this is where things kind of get interesting for the deep south in regards to winter weather chances. Now, the questions that I have with this, and the reason why I'm still somewhat skeptical, because I've had a lot of people around me talking about the winter weather, and I've been kind of warning them that, well, this may go one way or another, really, if I'm being honest. What models are showing right now, at least with the GFS here, is there's a good chance as we head from the 10th into the 12th time frame here that the cold air and the moisture will meet up. How much snow we'll get out of that is still very much up in the air. In fact, I'm not really too hot on trying to even get into something like totals at this point, because depending on the track of where the surface low sets up over here towards the Gulf, either we could see a bunch of snow over here towards the deep south if we can get some moisture to interact with this, and it really won't take a lot. But if we, let's say, get a surface low to develop and the trough continues to dig down, we may not see as much snow here because it'll be too dry. But literally, if we end up seeing this push a little further to the south, deep south could see more snow towards my area. If we go even further to the south, then maybe even parts like Mobile, Alabama and Biloxi, Mississippi could have a shot at snow. And that's the thing, both the icon and the euro are showing something entirely different. Time frames are varying greatly with this now, so this is where winter weather becomes an absolute pain to forecast sometimes. So prepare yourselves. Some of you that are looking for snow, there's a chance that you might get your hearts broken, and I'm not the one that's trying to be Bruno Mars. Terrible joke. Anyway, if we keep things moving here, eventually we start to see a little bit of a warming trend, and then we start to go right back into the cold as we get towards the middle part of the month. So winter weather chances may yet increase once more. This whole month of January at this point looks like it could be just one giant wild card where anything really could be possible. You could get potentially severe weather one week and then snow the next week. So definitely a whole lot of moving parts to this. We're going to do the best that we can to cover things on the channel here and be as accurate as possible, because this is the kind of stuff that makes a lot of people in the weather community start to scream. Now, as far as the temperatures are concerned, and this is where things have really started to change greatly, because I remember I was looking at this model run during New Year's Eve. At one point towards my area, I had a temperature of 3 degree low as we got towards the 10th. That's completely gone now. So if we move this along, okay, we already expected the cold air to start to march its way in, but by the time we get towards the 4th and the 5th, up towards the northern plains states, for example, we're starting to get those negative teens and maybe even negative 20s here by the time we get towards the 5th. Before, that took a little bit longer to occur. We were looking at the 7th and the 8th for the negative temperatures to kick in. Now we're starting to see the highs in the single digits by the time we get towards the 6th. Then by the time the 8th comes in, this is when the real cold air starts to hit. It's still pretty significant at this point, and we still have that little track right here, but notice that those below zero temperatures don't make it quite as far as previously forecast. We were even seeing Kentucky and Tennessee getting into the mix there, and we still may yet, but the timing has changed notably. That cold air isn't quite as rich to reinforce the cold that's already here. So while yes, it's still going to be below average and considerably colder, we may not get that extreme record-breaking cold for an extended duration like we had before. We're still going to deal with brutal cold though, make no mistake about it. Again, I have all three models up here too to go with it. Icon at the top, Euro at the bottom to go along with the GFS here. Because like I said, all three of these models are showing different outcomes, so it's making things a little bit more complicated to try to keep up with in regards to a forecast. Any of these three outcomes could occur or none of them could occur, so it's it's really a touch and go type of thing right now, but either way, it's still pretty unanimous as to just how ridiculously cold it's going to get for some of us. Just who gets the extreme cold is still up in the air. That's a big question that I'm going to have, probably leading up to the days where we actually start to see everything come to fruition and verify here. So we move further along here, like I said before, just looking at the troughing at the upper levels here, does look like there might be another cold blast setting up as we get past the middle part of the month. I know a lot of people are not happy to hear that, and I apologize, but I'm only showing you what I'm seeing here. And at least towards the northern plains in particular, it seems we're going to be dealing with those below zero temperatures or single digit temperatures for a while here. There's going to be a couple points in between, of course, where we end up being above average here. So that being said, we'll have to just keep a watchful eye on these model trends here. We'll be pretty much doing videos daily from this point forward until we figure out what's going on here. Doing that along with live streams may change my upload time slightly though, so just bear with me if you could on that. So going from the winter weather, the cold, back to the severe weather here, we're going to go ahead and look at the National Weather Service blend of models here, because if I try to do a model comparison with all three models when this literally picks a happy medium between the two, it would be kind of fruitless. I don't want to make this into a 50-minute video for you guys, unless that's really what you want. Then I'm willing to do it. But in any case though, if we were to go ahead and take a look at how things are going to be developing over the next couple of days leading up to our potential severe setup, this is heading into the evening of the 4th into the 5th. You can already see that moist sector building along with the warm sector, and we'll actually go ahead and keep a couple of the models up here and show the temperature. So we'll have the warm sector and the moist sector on the screen here. These two are coinciding perfectly with each other as we get into the afternoon of the 5th. Fortunately, by this point though, this model only goes by 6-hour increments after a given point in time, because we're not in range of the new model run just yet. But in any case though, ample dew points and also surface temperatures where we're getting into the mid to upper 60s, lower 70s on both temps and dew points towards the region here. So ample moisture, also ample surface temperatures, going to lead to some modest instability, which will be more than enough to get some storms firing along with the front that we're going to be seeing here. So as we go further along, of course, once that cold air begins to come in, the severe weather threat's going to drop off because we aren't going to have the moisture to work with at this point. Moisture and the surface temps usually will go hand in hand with one another. When the two aren't elevated too much, we aren't going to be really too concerned with severe weather at that juncture. And like I said before, barely getting dew points into the 30s and 40s for a lot of the US as a whole here, so not really a whole lot to talk about as we go beyond that point here. Now, as we go ahead and take a look at the precipitation, we're going to pull all the models back up on the screen here. This is where things really start to get wacky. So let's go ahead and move all of these, and of course this is where we start to look at our first storm system. Right around the evening of the 4th, look at what we have going on here with the GFS at this point. We already have some ice starting to kick up over towards Kansas, and snow beginning to form up in both Nebraska and parts of South Dakota, North Dakota even coming into the mix as well. As this storm begins to intensify and the low begins to deepen, that snow, that ice, everything starts to intensify, gets a little heavier. Then as we get a little bit of progression off to the east, start to get that line of thunderstorms right along that frontal boundary, and this is where our severe weather chances come into play here. So for the most part, looking like a linear event. There is of course a chance for a few prefrontal cells, so that's why I think all hazards are still possible. I'm mainly going to go along with the wind threat here, but can't rule out a couple of tornadoes. We'll probably do a more in-depth video with that tomorrow, where we kind of hone in more so on the severe weather threat. Still, of course, be talking about the wintry weather side of things, but as we go further along, of course, winter weather threat is going to make more of the headlines at this point, where we have what looks to be a pretty notable ice storm beginning to develop over here towards southern parts of the Ohio Valley, and then even working its way into the mid-Atlantic by this point. So it's going to be pretty busy over here in this. I'm going to have a lot to be going over. Then eventually over towards DC, we end up changing to all snow by this point, And even areas like Philadelphia and New York could get a little bit in the way of some snow flurries, maybe even some cumulative snow before all is said and done. Get some snow on the back end of this to kind of add on to that before all is said and done, before our next system comes in. And then this is where things start to get interesting for the deep south. It's this low pressure. Depending on how this low pressure progresses in both its track, its intensity, could determine who gets what. With the GFS outcome here, we have wintry precipitation as far south as Biloxi and Mobile here. And this is in the form of ice too, which could be devastating for this area if this does come into play here. Then, of course, further up towards northern Louisiana, back towards East Texas, even starting to set up over towards central parts of Mississippi, we have all snow here. Now, as this low continues to move here, notice how it kind of takes a little bit of an arcing motion here. This is where Birmingham, Atlanta, Chattanooga, all of you guys are coming into play here. Depending on how much moisture is available, depending on how the cold air interacts with the little bit of moisture that's going to be left over, will determine how much snow you may or may not get. So, like I said, not going to jump into totals at this point. Wouldn't surprise me if you could get up to an inch, but there's, like I said, there's a lot of variables, a lot of moving parts with this setup here. And of course, these models are kind of differing here. The icon is actually stiffing like north and central Georgia here, parts of Alabama. It's mainly going to be towards southern Georgia, even parts of Florida where we could have wintry precipitation there. So, like I said, it's going to be really interesting, somewhat stressful to try to figure out just exactly what is going to happen here. We're really not going to know until probably maybe a day or two before, if even that. It may just be a nowcasting situation. I've seen plenty of winter storms progress like this. As we move further along here, we'll see that storm system clear out. Rain chances for Florida are going to go up after that. And then, of course, while all of this is going on, big thing to talk about is going to be the lake effect machine. And it's really going to kick in after this first storm system here. So once this storm system passes, one thing that we didn't talk about when we were looking at the wind chart at 500 millibars is we're going to have a lot of winds coming in from the north. And once we get those winds pushing into the north, that it's going to be colder than those lake surface temperatures. That's usually all we need to get that lake effect machine going. And with the cold air that's going to be continuously pouring in here, we're going to probably see days and days on end of lake effect snow occurring. And this is pretty much going to be the dominant pattern mostly for pretty much, I would say, most if not all of January. So could be some big time totals over here towards the Great Lakes, especially towards the eastern Great Lakes, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario here as well. Now, as we go further along here, of course, as I mentioned before, we start to warm back up, then a new cold blast sets up, and potentially we could be seeing multiple snowstorms and winter storms, maybe even an odd chance of severe weather, though I kind of find it unlikely at this point for, again, areas towards the deep south here. So a lot to go over this month, very topsy-turvy. Regardless of whether we have this outcome of the GFS occurring, the icon outcome, the Euro, all of these are kind of differing in their own way. The timing is different, and it's absolutely a handful to keep up with here. So again, stay tuned. We're going to be probably making update videos. There's even a chance we could do even 2 videos a day, even if those uploads are late. So just, again, stay tuned, do the best that you can to keep up, because that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing at this point as well. So as we go further along here, one thing that I'm also going to be paying attention to is the snow totals for this first upcoming storm. I'm a little bit more comfortable talking about the totals there versus, let's say, the ones that are like towards the 10th and onward here. Nothing's really set in stone with those. Even this could vary a little bit here as well. So we're looking at probabilities of areas that could see 1 inch or more of accumulation at this point. So you can already see lake effect machine is in full effect here. This is heading into tomorrow that we're looking at. This is tomorrow morning. As we go further along here, you can see that those totals really start to ramp up by the time we get towards Friday night. Then as we get towards Saturday morning, we really start to see an increase in the action over towards the Great Lakes, also towards the mid-Atlantic here. We're starting to get some action. Then our next system comes in where we're also watching over towards the northwest to go along with this. Now, as we move further along here, this is where that next system comes in. We start to see More of those totals kicking in over towards parts of Nebraska and areas northward, especially towards South Dakota. South Dakota looks like a bullseye. We can actually up the total probability here for all is said and done, and you still see some pretty good probabilities of 2 inches plus over towards South Dakota, also towards Nebraska as well. We go up to 4 inches. Probabilities do start to drop off, so I would at least expect about 2 to 4 inches for these regions here. Of course, the lake effect machine, that's where things really get interesting. Looking at the 4-inch totals, those bright reds are getting into the 80 to 95% and above probabilities here. And consistently, we'll see those probabilities remain high. And keep in mind, like I said, this is the 4-inch plus category that we're looking at here, not the 1 inch. So significant totals definitely seem like they're going to be a factor over towards the Great Lakes. Now, looking at the ice accumulation, which is also going to be a big deal. We're not going to be seeing much until, of course, that storm kicks in. But when it does, keep in mind, we're looking at about 1/10 of an inch probability or greater. Not the highest probabilities I've seen as we get from Saturday into Sunday here. But what I've noticed is those numbers do increase as we go further into the day for Sunday. This is Sunday morning. We're getting into the 50% plus percentile of areas reaching a potential 1/10 of an inch of ice, which is what would make roadways extremely treacherous at this point. If we were to go all the way up to a 1/4 inch of ice here, probabilities are very low, which is good news, but we do have to keep an eye on things because depending again on how that storm system trends, this could go up or down. We get to a 1/4 inch ice, then the threat of power outages goes up dramatically with this as well. So a couple things to look at here. Again, we're going to be looking at our ice totals along with our snowfall totals. We're going to start out with ice first in this case. But as you can see, the bullseye actually seems to be more so over towards parts of southeastern, south central Missouri here, where we could actually potentially see 3/4 of an inch of ice. That is actually very concerning because, as we mentioned before, power lines and roadways are going to be a big problem as we go further along. The totals kind of drop off from this point. So we're going to actually go ahead and go all the way to the very end of this run here. We don't see too much in the way of areas where we get to above that 1/4 inch ice mark. But in any case, though, we do have to watch these areas that are getting awfully close to it. Again, depending on how things trend, this could actually go up. There's always that possibility. It does seem like a little bit of warm air has been trying to mix its way into some of the models here. We'll have to see how the storm system performs overall. But as time goes on here, you can see that cold air and that moisture that combines along with it over towards the western states where we get those snowfall totals. Even some of the valleys look like they could get into the action here, especially over towards Montana. And then, of course, as we mentioned before, South Dakota looks like a very big bullseye right now where we could see potentially up to 1 foot of snow in some places, especially towards the Wyoming, South Dakota line. Then as we go over towards parts of Nebraska, Kansas here, could be a couple areas where we get some notable snowfall totals there as well. Could be a couple systems that come in that push us all the way up to about maybe 4 to 6 inches possibly. Over towards the Ohio valleys, there's a couple bullseyes where we could get up to about 1 inch. Up towards the mountainous terrain of West Virginia here, especially towards the Alps, we can potentially get up to 1 foot or 2 feet of snow. And then off the Great Lakes, we have bullseyes here as well where we could see potentially 2 feet plus over the course of the next 10 days. So a lot going on there. And then last but not least, we're going to be looking at our rainfall totals here, because I do think that this is going to be a pretty big rainmaker too, albeit it will be chilly rain. Over towards the deep south, we could easily see up to 1 inch plus within the next 5 to 7 days here. And then if we go stretch that out all the way to 10 days, we start to include Florida in the mix just a little bit here. But even so, not really too much will change here. This is when we start to kind of lean a little bit more towards that wintry precipitation towards the deep south as well. So like I said, a lot of moving parts of this system. Expect updates to be pretty frequent here on the channel. So make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and also get that notification bell on, because we're probably going to be like I said, we're probably going to be putting something up every day, whether it's morning or evening, to keep track of this storm system here. Stay tuned for the latest, though. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. It's been Tyler Metalhead Weatherman calling it a day. Until next time.